Alright, today we're reviewing Elijah Craig Barrel Proof Batch C923. Is it whiskey of the year? Stay tuned to find out. Welcome back to the Bourbon Retriever, where I go in the wild, hunt bourbon, and bring it back for you. Today we got the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof C923. Probably my most anticipated bottle of the year. I am a huge Elijah Craig fanboy. Probably one of my favorite go-to pours. Great values, $70, around 12 years. You really just can't beat it. And the flavors that this gives off are just in my wheelhouse. So a little backstory on Elijah Craig. It's made by Heaven Hill. Many say that Elijah Craig was the father of bourbon, was the first to come up with the bourbon method. This bottle does hold a little sentimental value in my heart. Elijah Craig grew up maybe like 20 minutes from where I grew up in Virginia, and he was a Baptist minister. My dad's a Baptist minister, so there's a little bit of a sentimental value behind this bottle. So historically, Elijah Craig, these were always 12-year age products. 2 batches ago, they took that off and it dropped down to 11 and change. People got a little concerned when that happened. Our future batch is going to continue to go down, maybe even get lower than that, maybe 10, 9 years old. But swiftly after the 11-year-old batch, Elijah Craig dropped the 13-year, 7-month batch, which is the C batch. I think as long as Elijah Craig keeps these batches around 12 years, and maybe sometimes, maybe a couple years, they do a really high age statement, maybe 14, 15 years, I think people will be happy with it. The main concern though is if every batch all of a sudden is below 12 years and quality starts deteriorating. So when I first saw the specs in this bottle, it's the first one that they've been above in the 130s in a while. And then it's also a year and 7 months older than the old previous batches. So when I saw the press release on the specs, it was instantly my top bottle of the year. I wanted this bottle than many of the LEs out there, and I was lucky enough to grab it. So let's give it a pour and see how it is. All right, first the nose. Okay, on the front end you get a very light sweet oak, but it's not over prominent. And then it just becomes this really sharp caramel bomb. Not a very sweet caramel, but maybe a bitter caramel. Maybe it's been burnt a little bit with a little bit of baking spice. I'm trying to think maybe what spice it would be. Maybe a cinnamon spice. Well, maybe a little bit of a cinnamon spice there in the middle too. But I'm shocked about the oak notes. I thought for sure this would be much more oak prominent on the nose compared to other batches, where I would actually say some of the other batches, actually the oak was much more prominent. All right, onto the palate. All right, well, the first thing you notice is there is a lot of proof there. I know it's at 133, so it is pretty high, but I would even say this drink's hotter than 133. I highly recommend this would not be the first pour of the night that you drink. Otherwise, your palate's just gonna get blown out. So I'm gonna steal this note from my friend Taylor Folds. I popped this with him maybe a week ago, and he said the first note on the tip of the tongue is blueberry, and I have to agree with that. That's not a note I would have picked out without talking to him, but that first note you get on this is 100% a blueberry. So it is very soft on the front palate, but when it gets to the mid palate, it becomes super intense. It turns into almost this pecan brittle, peanut brittle, something maybe a little burnt caramel, something like that. The other note I'll say about the mid palate is it turns into this almost buttery butterscotch. This is the first bottle I've had in recent memory that gives me those dusty notes. And when I say a dusty note, that is the butter, almost maybe even almost like butterscotch taste. And that's exactly what I get in the mid palate in this bottle. And then on the finish, that's where you get most of the wood notes and some baking spices coming in. So overall, I would say it's a very complex pour. You get many different flavors from the mid, front, and late palate of this drink. So while it's a really great pour, there are 2 things on this that aren't really my cup of tea. The first is the proof. This drink's very, very hot. Typically Elijah Craig's, to me, they're a little more balanced, and this one is just super hot. I hope as it sits in the bottle, maybe it'll mellow out a little more, but I would highly recommend adding a couple drops of water to this because I think it makes it drastically better. The second thing about this bottle that I wish was a little better is it's not that sweet. Typically from the Elijah Craig's, I get a little more sweetness, and that sweetness isn't really necessarily coming through on this bottle. That sharp middle brittle note, that is the most prominent note in this bottle, and it's just for me a little too overpowering. But for those out there who haven't tasted a Dusty or don't know what a Dusty tastes like, I would highly recommend grabbing this bottle because it is the only thing that's come out recently that gives me anything close to those notes. All right, final review, recommend, buy, pass, get it at a bar. I would recommend buying this bottle for $70 for almost a 14-year-old product. You really can't beat it. Like for instance, let's see, I have this Heaven Hill Select bottle. This is a 14-year-old Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, and this cost me $200, and it's a distillery only release. So to get something of similar quality to the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof that's on the market right now with the C batch, you have to pay a lot more money. The secondary, these are going for about $100. I would pay the $100 for it. I think it's a unique pour that everyone should try, but I would tell everyone to keep their expectations in check. I do not think this is Whiskey of the Year contender bottle. I think the Michter's 10 of bourbon is better. I think the Jack Daniel's 12 is better. So I don't think this is going to win of the year, but it is a bottle I will put at the end of the year blind because I want to see if it actually does live up to the hype when you blind it with other bottles. If you're enjoying this review, hit that subscribe button, and before you head out, check out this one or this video, and until next time, cheers.